the regular time for our meeting, but we had to make some adjustments because of a variety of reasons. And so I appreciate your being here and being willing to attend the meeting tonight. So I'll call the meeting to order and ask for a roll call.
John, Joycelyn, Michelle is out, and Ronald, unless Michelle's online.
Michelle, are you online? Okay, she will be online shortly when she's able, and so we'll take a look at having a quorum. We'll take a look at the agenda, and we need a motion for approval of the agenda if there is such.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the agenda as submitted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, we got that recorded. All right, we have minutes from June 3rd, 2021. Everyone had an opportunity to review those. Give you a couple of seconds here to look them over again. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for June 3rd, 2021?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor of approving the minutes of June 3rd, say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. First item is levy certification.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, we have some good news on levy certification. Is that correct?
I mean, I think you can say if you can say that it's good news that our predictions were correct, then yes, then it's good news. As you know, it is much a prescriptive process, but I'm going to go through the process real quickly on how we certify the levy. That the board's required to certify the library's operating levy each year. This follows several actions that lead up to this decision. The board adopted a non-binding levy of 40 cents in March. And then the library held a public hearing to solicit comments from the public concerning the library's budget and the library levy of 40 cents. And that did occur on June the 3rd from the minutes that were just approved. The board adopted the 2021-22 annual budget on, actually it's after June the 3rd, it would have been a little bit later, but following the recommendation of the committee on June 3rd. And that budget presumed that the maximum levy rate would be 40 cents based on preliminary estimates. Before the end of August every year, the library submits a calculated maximum levy rate based on the process in section 137 of the revised statutes for the tax year. The calculated levy ceiling, and in fact, if you want to look at the worksheet, it's attached in board docs, but the levy ceiling for the coming year will be 34.68 cents per 100 cents of assessed valuation. And this is what has been reviewed by the state auditor and has been certified by their calculations. Just for point of reference, the current year's levy rate is 36.96. So it's about a 2.25 cent decrease in levy.
About a 13% reduction overall.
Overall.
Hey, that's the good news. I think we had some, at our budget hearing, we had some good questions asked from members of the public and our patrons, and we'd had quite a good discussion on that, and we had told everyone at that time we thought that there would be a significant drop in the amount of the certification of the levy, and sure enough, that's happened. And so we appreciate that, and we're able to do that. So do we need action by the committee to recommend to the board this certification?
Yeah, that's our practice. Our practice is for the committee to recommend adoption of the certification as calculated, which would be 34.68 cents per 100 assessed valuation.
Okay, who's the lucky person that gets to approve that, to
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there further discussion or questions? All right, hearing none, we'll ask all those in favor of the motion to say aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, motion is approved. We'll make that recommendation to the board at the time of our meeting later on. The annual audit, this is one of our functions as a committee, and that is to work with the auditors along the way to make sure we have a thorough and correct audit. And so we're happy to have our auditors here tonight and would like to ask them if they would present the annual audit so we can consider it for acceptance and recommendation.
I thought you were just gonna accept it. Try a little auditor humor.
They want you to show your work.
It reminds me of back in grade school, maybe high school, you had to show your work.
Yeah.
How did you come up with the answer? Anyway,
You usually had to put a lot of pictures in to, extend them.
good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Keenan. I'm with the firm of Cochran Hedvick and Company, here to present the results of the financial audit for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. We've had a little PowerPoint presentation. We have a handout. We thought we were going to be in the other room. And then we'll do the same presentation a little on at 4 o'clock. And we co-venture this with Mr. Ralph C. Johnson and Company. And Ralph has been so kind to join us this afternoon. So you should have received 2 documents. First is the comprehensive financial report, the larger document, and also the required communications and management letter. So on page 1 of the PowerPoint, a little bit about Cochran Hedvick and Company. We've been serving Missouri and Kansas since 1975. We go through what's called a peer review, where an outside firm will come in and review our quality control standards. And we're pleased to report we've been awarded the highest rating as a result of that review. We're members of various professional organizations, the AICPA, the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, the AICPA Government Audit Quality Center, as well as BDO Seidman, which is an accounting firm. And we're licensed to practice in both the states of Missouri and Kansas. Our engagement objectives, we engage to perform an audit of the financial statements of Consolidated Library District, also known as Mid-Continent Public Library, for the year ended June 2021. It should be noted that this report will be submitted to the Government Finance Officers Association for excellent achievement in financial reporting award. It should be noted that the library has received this award 10 consecutive years beginning in 2011. And this report, we believe, will also qualify for that award. So again, not all governmental entities present and provide the GFOA the information in which to get that certificate. That's a very good achievement. And again, there's a lot of good information included, especially the statistical section, which gives 10 years of information regarding the financials and other key metrics of the library. A summary of our audit approach. Again, we conducted our audit in accordance with general accepted auditing principles, as well as governmental auditing standards, which require that we plan and perform the audit to obtain reasonable but not absolute assurance that the financial statements are free of material misstatements. And we report on controls, internal controls in compliance with laws and regulations. What we mean by absolute assurance is that we use a risk-based approach to look at various transactions, but we do not look at all transactions. And again, that's what our audit approach focuses on. On page 4, The Auditors Standards Board of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants recommend that we communicate these matters to the governing board. Illegal acts, none came to our attention as a result of performing our audit procedures. There were no changes in significant accounting policies during the fiscal year ended June 30, 2021. We're pleased to report we had no disagreements or difficulties dealing with management or staff, and we had full cooperation and access to all the books and records. On page 5, a financial and compliant audit really addresses these questions, 3 basic questions. The first question, are the basic financial statements free of material misstatement? And our response is we have issued an unmodified opinion that indeed the financial statements are free of material misstatements, are fairly presented in all material respects. Sometimes that's referred to as a clean opinion. Again, that's the highest level of opinion that we can offer on financial statements. Question 2, are internal controls over financial reporting adequately designed and operating effectively? Our response to that question is we did not identify any deficiencies related to internal controls over financial reporting that we consider to be material weaknesses. And had we identified any such matters, we're required to report those to the governing board. And finally, did the library comply in all material respects with finance-related laws and regulations? Again, the results of our testing disclosed no instances of non-compliance or other matters that we are required to report to the governing board. On page 6, the management letter comments are included in our required communications that management has responded to. The first comment relates to budgeting. There was a fund that ended up being over budget. Excuse me, get what fund that was.
It was the gift.
The grants and gifts fund.
Grants and gifts.
Usually I write that down. Grants and gift fund, it was $30,072 over. So we're recommending that, again, just review your processes and procedures to amend the budget when those types of things occur. I believe there were some additional grants that were received that weren't received after the budget had been adopted. And so typically those, if they're not amended when you get that new budget, new grant agreement, then you may go over it. Just to review those and make the appropriate budget amendment. We just need to disclose that in the financial statements as that it went over. It's certainly, I'm going to call it a large deal. Certainly it's something that you need to do and make sure that you're not in violation of your budget. The second one relates to cybersecurity. It's more of a reminder. I know that the library has processes of training, insurance, but we've been putting this in all of our letters because the exposure to cybersecurity has really come to the forefront for public entities, private entities, and it's really something that needs to be and we do take seriously. So it's really a reminder of the good practices to keep that up and always have the training. And just be wary of those types of things because they could really cripple an organization for a short period of time. And certainly some organizations have paid the ransom and it can be significant. So we throw that in there as a good best practices reminder. And the last one is future accounting pronouncements. And the good news is they haven't issued any new ones since last year. And as we've spoken previously, the one that we believe that's going to have an impact as far as the financial reporting are your leases with some of your facilities. Right now, those are operating leases, and when you write the rent check, you record that as an expenditure. What the new standard will say is that needs to be capitalized as an obligation, a right to use obligation. You'll have offsetting right to use asset that you'll amortize off. So kind of the same effects, but it's constant treatment between governmental entities and the private industry. And on page 7, looking at, again, the financial results at the government-wide level, the library's assets and deferred outflows exceeded its liabilities and deferred inflows, resulting in a positive net position of around 141.7 million. As you can see in this graph, your most significant component of that is your investment in capital assets, net of related debt, which is really non-spendable, and then you have restricted and then unrestricted. So they're pretty positive results as far as that goes. On page 8, continuing with financial results, the library's most significant government-wide obligation, as we know, relates to the Series 2018 certificates of participation that have an outstanding balance around 62.3 million at the end of 2021. Again, also the library reported a net pension liability of about 3.7 million. This compared to a net pension asset of about 2.2 million, or a change of around 5.9 million in the net pension asset versus liability. Again, that's kind of offset by the change in deferred inflows and outflows. And really what that does is, and we'll refer to a page here, is the interest earnings that they projected were a lot lower than anticipated. So what they still have to report the interest earnings at what they are, but they take that amount and they don't hit your net position right away. They defer it and amortize that over years, kind of the smoothing out effect. And so when they're using actuarial assumptions and they're different from actual results, they kind of amortize those in over 4 or 5 years, and they go both ways. But if you want to look at page 43, if you have your financials, is a 6-year trend of your net pension liability and assets. And you can see the trend as for your net pension liabilities going up about 4 or 5 million each year. And looking at your net fiduciary position, again, you can see if you look at net investment income, there's been some pretty high fluctuations from $1.2 million in this year. And again, we also report 1 year behind. And so I guess that effect would have been just the first part of COVID was in March, and the market kind of went down for the first part. And then if you look some of the other years, you have interest income of 10 million, 9 million, and you've gone up and down as far as a net pension asset or liability. But the key to look at as far as even with that case, you're 96% funded.
Which is incredible.
It's still pretty darn good.
Right.
And then if you look at, you'll have some deferred inflows and outflows that will be coming in. The market has done remarkably well, I think, in the last year, which will be reflected. So it's very possible that this will flip around somewhat again next year. And again, Quan and I have looked back at the funding contribution percent, and it really hasn't varied by 1%. I think we look back to 2011, and you're at 16. It's been right around 16, 17%. So the actual percent that you funded hasn't really changed. So we thought we'd point that out. Again, it's more of a, here's this amount at 630, and you have the actuaries projecting out years and years in advance. So any questions related to that particular issue?
I was actually very concerned with that because, I mean, we had an asset that became a liability. And so Quan and I started digging in this. And as soon as he told me that the actuarial report, the point in time that they were focused on was March of 2020.
Right.
I mean,
Like-
everybody knows what the market was doing then. I mean, it was cratering. And so certainly if the actuarial report was done 3 months later, it wouldn't look nearly as dire as it did. But I think the smoothing that Michael's talking about really does show that,
Yeah.
we're not talking about Illinois. We're not talking about California.
No, it's, the
Yeah.
loggers overall is, again, it's a agent multiple employer, so they treat Mid-Continent Library as its own. Where if you're on the other side of the state line, Kansas, their capers, they treat everybody as together. And they're way underfunded. They're one of the least underfunded pension plans in the country. So when you look at that, I think you're looking at this point in time, you're still in really good shape from that standpoint.
That mismatch is like so many other things that happened this year. You can't,
Yeah.
and you can't take that year and extrapolate too much from it. The only time I think that we've had difficulty there was, I don't know, it must have been around 2010 or so.
It was around 2010, yeah.
Yeah, where we really, I mean, the smoothing didn't work out so well at that point. And we had to actually put about $1.5 million into directly, out of our budget into the fund. But that's a very rare occurrence.
That was the tail end of the Great Recession.
Right.
And it also actually provided an opportunity for us to pay down liability, and was better for us to do that than to, put it in a money market or something like that.
Yeah.
It was actually a unique situation, but that's been the only.
Yeah, that was a unique
Yeah,
situation.
well, and also
Yeah.
back then it was reported differently.
That's,
You didn't have to report your liability, you just looked in the notes and said,
Okay.
oh, we're underfunded.
Yeah,
that's true.
And they also, the loggers was keeping things differently. They had a pool of funded people that had retired. Those weren't being included in the libraries, what was being reported. So when the GASB 68 was implemented, it changed a lot of the ways that things are presented. So certainly something that change again next year. Again, even if that was an asset, you can't spend it. It's not available. And you do report this liability, although if you look at your fund statements, it doesn't show up there. You're looking from budgetary, how much do we need to pay for retirement? And it's 16 point whatever percent of your wages. And again, I think your wages kind of have gone down or they've gone up.
Yeah. Well, I think they went down some because of the hiring freeze.
I think some, but overall it's shown it went up, but it kind of went down a little bit because of the COVID.
Right.
And, if everybody could have predicted all the results of what COVID was, we would have predicted that the market and some of the sales taxes and some of the entities that thought it was going to be really bad. Turned out that the sales taxes went up. Now, certainly some that are more tourist or more food and beverage and hotel hospitality, certainly those cities were truly impacted. Moving on general fund revenues exceeded expenditures before transfers out of a little over $1 million. On page 8. Transfers out to the capital project fund totaled $5.5 million. The general fund balance increased again, a little over $1 million from the year ended June 30, 2021, resulting in an ending fund balance of just shy of $30 million. Again, of that amount, $27 million is unassigned. And as a percent of the unassigned fund balance is approximately 48% of your FY 21-22 expenditure budget. Again, as we've talked about it many times, we're at June 30, you've already collected a majority of your property taxes up front. So this fund balance at a point in time is going to decrease as you incur those expenditures.
Right.
And I think everybody has recognized that's why there's a quite a high fund balance at June 30. And finally, I had Vic and the company and association with Wells Street Johnson certainly appreciate it. Serve the Mid-Country Public Library. And certainly want to thank Juan and Steve and the staff Again, we did a lot of this, mostly all remote with the COVID and those types of things. And I think we did a lot of that last year. And really the COVID has changed the landscape of a lot of entities as far as their ability to, knowing that they can work from home and work remotely and using electronic portals so the information is saved, it's uploaded. So I think that a lot of that will continue, doing some remote, and then again, some will come back on site again as things hopefully improve. Any questions I might be able to answer?
Yeah, any questions that members might have? Michelle, did she ever come online?
I don't believe so, no.
I'm here. I'm good.
Okay. All right. Time for questions after the audit presentation, Michelle. We're just calling for questions if there are any.
No, I don't have any.
Okay. One question, usually you auditors try to pop little surprises on everyone by asking for some detail in an unexpected way about something that has occurred during the course of the year. So did you do that this year?
We did. We changed the scope of our subsequent disbursement testing, which is a cutoff procedure, lowered that to a smaller amount.
Okay.
So, yeah, we did the element, and we're supposed to do an element of surprise by changing the scope or making inquiries. And as you know, that we made inquiries of yourself and Steve as well, if there were any concerns, and we were not made aware of any concerns.
Right.
But yeah, we did do a curveball, if you will, towards them.
Well, good. A little curveball occasionally doesn't hurt.
Well, we'll see if they can hit it.
Yeah. Apparently they did.
Apparently they did,
And we appreciate
I would
that.
suspect that they would. Again, as you know, you got a good staff here, and they're great to work with. And it's always good when we come in and we don't have to make a bunch of adjustments. The books are adjusted and we can actually do our audit procedures versus trying to correct the books for them.
Yeah. Okay, Michael, thank you. Ralph, do you have anything to add to this? Okay, well, we appreciate your working with the audit team on this.
So if you do have questions later on, certainly you can get my contact information from Juan and our telephone. I'm more than happy to answer any questions via email or telephone. And so that concludes my presentation. And again, what we usually do is, you know, we don't dive into some of the details like we do here unless there's some questions asked.
Right.
I think overall it was, again, another, I think, positive year, and the audit went well. So thank you.
We appreciate your effort on this and your work toward getting this done, and thank you for your appearance tonight, and Ralph as well. So,
You're welcome. Thank you.
The only difficult part about the COVID audits is that we can't put them in the most uncomfortable room we have
yeah,
because they don't actually report here. I'm just kidding. We always try to give them a really nice workspace, but yeah, it has been different.
Windows.
Well, yeah, usually it's no windows in a basement, no bad ventilation. Usually that's what we give you. No, but that hasn't, in truth, that has not been the case. But we haven't, but it is a little different. We haven't seen the auditors like we normally did pre-COVID. Usually they were here for a couple of weeks, and we'd have somebody, you know, a different younger person in professionally dressed running up and down the halls looking for Brenda or Quan, and then we just aren't seeing those people.
They stuck out a bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, you usually know. You usually know.
They look like auditors.
They look like auditors.
yeah, I have to reminisce a little bit back in the days, a long time ago, when I was a city manager in Ohio. In Ohio, the audits are conducted by the state auditor, not by outside auditors. They were at that time. I'm sure that's probably changed now. But then there would be an auditor assigned to you, and that auditor would come. And frequently, the auditors would like where they were staying. You know, they liked to be in that place, and they would take an excessively long time doing the audit, you know, into the months. So I hate to admit this, but we always like to give them a small and uncomfortable room so that they would want to move on in a quicker fashion than they normally would have done. We didn't do that here.
No, I've been assigned to some very unique locations over the years.
I'm sure you have. All right.
Probably similar to what you're describing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just
Okay. Thank you very much.
want to throw it going down memory lane.
You probably have to.
When I was, a million years ago when I was in public accounting, the audit staff needed some people, so they went over to the tax section, they grabbed some of us. And we didn't know what we were doing, so they had us go in this warehouse and counting bales. We have no idea what's inside it, but that you have to confirm inventory. But the auditors wanted to have the real sexy, neat stuff. And one of the elements to be determined for inventory on hand was a fluid. So you go on top of these huge tanks, they put a rod in it, you know, to see how deep it was, and they had to figure the junior high geometry, it's the volume of whatever. But 10 years later, they found out it was PVCs and dioxin. So they gave us guys in tax department, you count the bales or whatever it is, we'll do the neat stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I should say back to the Ohio model, I forgot to mention this, that the state, when they sent an auditor in to do the annual audit, they required the city being audited to pay that person's salary and benefits for the amount of time he was there, or she. And so that gave us even more incentive to hurry them on.
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think we need a motion to accept the audit and to recommend recommend it to the full board for approval. And so I would accept such a motion. It's been moved. Is there a second? It's been seconded. All those in, is there any more discussion or questions that anyone might have?
I'd
Okay,
just like to thank our auditors, and I never want to get old to say thank you to Quan and his staff for another year of exception. So
Absolutely.
That's absolutely correct. Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah. Thank you, Quan. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you, Michelle. All those opposed? All right. Motion is passed, and we'll make that recommendation to the board meeting coming up. All right, thank you for that. And other business, do we have other business?
I'm not aware of any. Quan, are you aware of any other business that we need to discuss from the finance committee?
I'm not sure, do we have the agenda on the financial software?
Oh, no, we were just going to mention that there's something that Brian and Quan and I have been investigating. Blackbaud, our financial software that we use, has been upgrading their software platform, and they're actually moving, the system that we have is a hosted environment. I mean, it's just in the room just right over there. And they're doing away with that. They're moving everything into a cloud-based computer system. So our choice is move to the cloud or go back to ledger books, maybe, I'm not sure. And so, but we're really, obviously we're very sensitive to that. We want to make sure that it's safe, secure, and all of that. So Quan and Brian and I are looking at that with our IT staff and making all the sure, but mostly just want to give you all a heads up that we may be changing our software, but it's mostly because we're changing our software because the company that we're working with is changing their
Yeah, okay.
the way that they provide it for us.
Well, that's-
Is that anything else?
Well, yes, that's it. And I also discussed with Michael about that too. But kind of thinking, we probably have to take a look because the online version is kind of different than the locally hosted version. So we can also look at it into other package, it's better.
But yeah, I mean, that's a good point, that we will definitely work in conjunction with our auditors to make sure that we're doing the right things as we migrate.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Quan.
Any other business to come before us? All right, I think, hearing none, we will have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
This is moved and seconded. All those in favor say